Good morning or afternoon, people. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I am the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is really, it's designed for leadership teams or anybody in a leadership team role or supporting role in the chapter. What we're going to do is we're going to go beyond the membership level tools and look at some of the other functionality that's in BNI Connect, specifically focusing around the areas of data management and data input that chapters do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and also take a look at how to get data back out of the system. So let's take a look at some of the reports that are available and some of the other tools that are available so that you can really check on the progress of your chapter and really see what's going on in the chapter as well. Some of the areas that we're going to cover, for example, is going to be, how do you enter a Poms report into BNI Connect? How do you verify the online slips that have been passed? How do you enter a visitor in BNI Connect? How do you assign a mentor and a mentee? How do you use the visitor invitation? How do you assign the speaker rotation? We're going to kind of click through a lot of the functionality and just kind of see what it does and show you the right way to process things. In addition to that, we will go through a number of the leadership team level reports in the system as well. So before we get started, as always, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. The first thing that I always like to mention is that we are in a live webinar. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please do ask those questions as we are going through the material today. I'll be happy to answer those questions. We're scheduled for, this webinar generally takes between 45 minutes and 1 hour to complete. Most of the webinars that we do are about 30 minutes long, but this one we're going over a little bit more than usual. So this one tends to go 45 minutes to an hour. A lot of it will also depend on the number of questions and types of questions that are coming through. Now, I always welcome questions. I love the fact that this is a live interactive webinar. So please do ask your questions. Just type them in to the questions panel. I'll see them pop up on my screen, and I'll be able to answer those as we're going through the material today. Even though we're scheduled for 45 minutes to an hour, I will stay on until every single question has been answered. We're recording these webinars as we always do, and the webinars are made available on the support site. So you can either go directly to support.bniconnect.com or click on this question mark in the upper right-hand corner once you're logged into BNI Connect. When you click on that question mark, it will take you over to the support site. Hopefully in the next day or two, I will have the entire August series posted. I'm still scheduling those. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see chapter training and documentation. And here's where you'll find the recorded webinars. And month by month, we do post all of the recordings. You can click on a month and review any of those videos. You can watch them right in here, or of course, you can go up to the YouTube channel directly. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. We have not just webinars up here, but we have short 3 to 5 minute educational moments and announcements and special messages from Dr. Meisner, all sorts of things up there on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to be notified when new stuff is added, just go ahead and subscribe to it. All right, so let's get started with the leadership team stuff today. Now, before we get deeper into the system, and again, as I said, we are going to have to dive into all of those menus up there at the top, but I do get a lot of questions especially from vice presidents about the Poms report. And one of the most common questions that we get is having to do with the online slips. So when members are entering online slips and they're entering, the thank you for closed business, they're entering the one-to-ones and the referrals and things like that. They're wondering, where does that information go? How do I know that it was entered properly? And how come it's not showing up on the summary Poms report right away? Here's the deal with the online slips. When a member enters a slip into the system, it's kind of like putting it into the virtual basket or the queue for your next upcoming meeting. So if I was to go and I was to, let's say, submit a CEU slip for today's webinar, so I'm going to put in a one CEU slip for today's webinar, quantity 1, and I submit this. Now, before I submit this, let's take a look. My CEUs are at 49, I believe. Oh, they're at the bottom. Right now they're at 123 CEUs for the year. So I'm going to add one CEU here and click submit. And you'll notice that my statistics here for CEUs, it's still 123, even though I just submitted one. How come it didn't change? And that's because the Poms report, my meeting hasn't yet happened for next week. The Poms report hasn't been submitted. Once it gets submitted, then these numbers change. If you'd like to make sure it did submit successfully, you can do that by clicking on the Review My CEU Slips. And here I'll be able to see that the slip here, 7:30, that's today, for 1 credit here was submitted and it's in draft mode. So that's how you know it was submitted successfully. It's in draft mode, which means it's waiting for the vice president. And from a troubleshooting standpoint, a lot of times members will come to you and say, well, you know, I wasn't absent 3 times. It just doesn't seem right. Or, you know, I passed 3 referrals last week. How come it's only showing 2? They can always click on this My Personal Participation Report. And the best thing to do is ask them to go into this report and print it out or look through it. And because it gives you a week-by-week analysis, have them point out to you, well, exactly where is the discrepancy? What day did you have a substitute, or what day did we mark you absent that you think you were there, or you know, maybe the substitute didn't show up. But this allows you to very easily go in and say, okay, well, he did have a substitute there that day. I know it was on April 30th. Now on the leadership team, you can go back and you know which report to actually fix. So it's a very helpful report here, the personal participation report. All right, so let's jump in. We do need to go into the menus, and the place to find things in BNI Connect are always going to be up here under these menus. Now, a lot of people come back to me and they say, you know, BNI Connect is very, very confusing. I don't know where to find anything. I don't know where it's located or how to get there. Here's how I remember where to go and do things. Network is always going to be the social media components, the networking components. So if you want to go and look for groups or connections, things like that, that's where you're going to go. 99.9% of the time, if it's not here on the home screen, the place you're going to go is either operations or reports. It depends on what you're looking to do. If you're just looking to get information out of BNI Connect, you're looking to get the stats for the week or the VP report or the absences report or things like that, all of that output read-only data is going to be under reports. If you're looking to input stuff, you're going to input the weekly Poms report. You're going to input your chapter goals, or you're going to pair up a mentor and a mentee. That's always going to be under operations. Operations is stuff you do. Reports is stuff you read. So let's go and take a look at operations and take a look at what we have available to us under the chapter level operations. On the left-hand side, you'll see our different areas of management. And on the right-hand side, you'll see individual things. And you can see we have managed visitors, we have meeting management. Obviously, visitors has all the things to do with, well, visitors. And then meeting management, that's going to be the Poms and the speaker rotation, the things that you're doing really for each individual meeting. Manage memberships, I'm not going to get into too much today, but this is where you're going to go if you are doing the review for online renewals. It's also where you go if you are entering applications at the chapter level. So if you're a secretary treasurer and you're entering applications into BNI Connect, this is where you would go. The goals program, we actually had a webinar on this yesterday, going through the whole goals program, so you're welcome to check out that video. The mentoring program is where you can assign mentors and mentees or look at the people that have been assigned. Create email, this gives us a couple of different email options from within the group. And then the news function allows you to publish really a newsletter, so to speak, up on your chapter website without having to really go in and edit the whole website. So it really allows you to just kind of put little things, put snippets up there. I'm going to work my way back up the list here. This create email, one of the most useful things that I find in this menu is the first two options under Create Email. One thing that, especially as a leadership team, that you're constantly looking to do is to communicate. You want to get a message out to your entire chapter. Now, a lot of people go and they try to use this mail function up here, and that's great and everything, but two things kind of bad about using that function. The first of which is that it's really meant to be an internal messaging system. So unless people have opted to forward the email to their outside email addresses, a lot of people miss those messages in their inbox because it's just within BNI Connect. The second reason is that it's not meant to be just a chapter email. That is meant to be for all of your connections. So as you start to know more people in BNI and you start connecting with people in BNI around the world, you can't just select all and email your chapter. So under Create Email, the first thing here is email my chapter. And this is my recommended method to you if you need to get a message out to your whole chapter, whether it's reminding them about an upcoming Visitors Day or whether it's to tell them about the after hours that you're going to be having. So if I click on email my chapter, what this does is it goes into your chapter and it gets all of the email addresses for your chapter and puts them in a nice distribution list for you. And the nice thing about this is that you can just, all of the new members that have come in, their email address will be there, and all of the old members that have left, the ones that have dropped in the past week or 2 weeks or 2 months, they will no longer be in the list, which is a lot different from what we used to have to do, which is kind of go into our sent items or our mail and hit reply all and hope that it went to everybody. You can highlight everybody, hit Control C, or you can always hit Control A when you're clicked in here, and then Control C, and that will allow you to copy and paste those. Just start up your own email program. I recommend putting everybody in the BCC line, and you can then click send after you've typed your message out. The nice thing is that this is going through your own email program, so there'll be less chance that it'll be flagged as spam. It also means that you will get all the replies to it directly. So Steve has a question. He says, well, how about people in late status? Yes, people in late status will appear in that list as well. The people that will not appear in that list are people that are in expired or people that have been dropped from the chapter. But late people will show up, and pending renewal should show up as well. But good question, Steve. Thank you. Pending member will depend on the business rules in your particular region. All right. So hopefully that helps, Steve. All right. So the second thing here that I'd like to show you while we're in this menu anyway is there is an email visitor invitation tool in here as well. And I find this one to be really helpful to share with your chapters as well. Oh, hold on. Before I get on to that, Sid asks, how do you edit the member email list? So you really can't edit the list. It's just a quick function to get that list. The way to edit the actual list is by, as people leave the chapter and they're joining the chapter, making sure that the applications are input for them. But, once I copy this and I have it in my own email program, I can remove certain people if I know that I don't want Jacob Goodwin to get this message. I can delete him out of the list, or I can even copy and paste it, here first and edit it if I want to do it that way. But making sure people are on there or off of there, that's really more of a membership management thing. So does that answer your question, Sid? All right, so going back to the visitor invitation, the visitor invitation allows you to send out a very quick custom BNI Connect email invitation to a potential visitor. And this takes a lot of the guesswork out of inviting, especially for members that might be, they might not be sure what to say when they're inviting somebody to a BNI meeting. That's what this email visitor invitation is great for. All they need to do is to enter somebody's name. So let's see, John Smith, their company name, and their email address. I'm going to enter my own email address here so I can see what this looks like. So it'll send the actual invitation to me. If you'd like to test this out, just put your own email address in and just send a message to yourself. So I can add a personal message. The personal message is going to be the first paragraph of the email that gets sent out. So I'm just going to put, it was great meeting you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. I click send. It's going to take all that information. It's going to wrap it up in a neat little box and send it off immediately to my email address. So I should have this momentarily. And here it is. Here's the email that was sent. You can see it has a nice BNI graphic up at the top. If I scroll down a little bit, it inserted my opening paragraph. And then it puts in all of the information about the chapter automatically. So I don't have to remember where the chapter meets, what time they meet, what day they meet. All of that stuff's entered automatically. It then briefly explains BNI, lets them know we want you to come visit and to please RSVP. Now, we are not tracking this information, so we're not keeping a database of email addresses or figuring out who's sending and how many they're sending out and all of that stuff. There's no reports available for it. It's really just a means to get a nice email out. Now, one thing that I do ask is, well, how can we use this for like a visitor's day or things like that? What I would say in that case is if for those, this email isn't really written for visitors' days. My recommendation would be to send a copy to yourself and then just edit this message. So you still have the nice branded information in here, but you could change the wording to better suit your needs or to be able to forward that along. So. All right, so visitors. Let's talk about visitors real quick. Once somebody has accepted a visitor to come and visit the chapter, you do want to make sure that you are doing two things with visitors. The first of which is if they've accepted your invitation, you want to register them for the next meeting or for whatever meeting they say that they would like to come to. The next part of that is that if and when they show up to the meeting, you want to make sure that you're recording those visitors that do come to the meeting. So it is a two-step process, but if you do all of the steps, then you only need to do the data entry portion of it once. And if you have your members get in the habit of doing this, then your visitor hosts, for example, have even less data entry work to do because it's already been entered. So before I get into that, we do have a question from Mary. Mary says, how do we change the location if our meeting is incorrect in the visitor invitation? So that's pulling the information directly from the BNI Connect database. So what that means is that if it's incorrect in that invitation, that means that it's incorrect in the database. You do need to contact your regional office and just ask them to please update the address of your meeting in the chapter properties. So that's something that does have to be done by your regional office or your executive director. If they're not sure how to do it, just please have them contact support and we will absolutely be happy to help them with that. But good question, Mary. So does that help? All right, so registering visitors. So before a chapter meeting, you sent out your invitation, they reply back, they say, yeah, you know what, I really want to come to that meeting. What you want to do is to register them for that meeting. So what I'm going to do is under this manage visitors here, one of the options you should see, and this is an option that all members should see, is it says register a prospective visitor. Register a prospective visitor. So one, not a visitor that's already come to the meeting, but somebody that's planning to come to a meeting. Now, this is a very simple form. It's just really filling out all of that visitor's contact information ahead of time. So we choose their profession and their specialty. what date they're going to visit. Now you'll notice that it only allows me to choose future dates. This chapter, the Burr chapter up in Antarctica, we don't have any meetings left this month, so I'd have to go next month, and I can only choose Wednesdays, which are the days that that chapter meets. So let's say this person said they're going to come on the 5th. I can then type in their name, their address if I know all of this information. Now, one thing I always say when I'm talking to members about this is to say, you're actually creating this person's, what could be their permanent, lifelong record in BNI Connect. So when you're putting in this prospective visitor, now let's say they show up to the meeting, this record will stay with them if they put in an application and they become a member and they become a director later. All of that will all follow from this one record that you first put in. So be careful when you're putting it in, and take some time to fill it out correctly. All right, and phone number is mandatory. And email address is also mandatory. And one of the reasons why the email address is mandatory is that the beauty of entering a visitor before a chapter meeting is that it sends out a whole set of emails that helps you to guide you through this process. The first of which is it does email that visitor. So it'll email jeremy@therightclick.net here. It'll email them saying, congratulations, you are registered to visit this meeting. This does an amazing thing. It sets up a level of expectation with that visitor. So a lot of times when we invite somebody to BNI, we're kind of casual about it. Hey, you want to come to my meeting? Sure, I'll come to your meeting. Great, I'll see you on Thursday. Thursday comes around and no visitor. This helps to say, well, you agreed to it, I registered you, and I expect you to show up to that meeting. So this is the email that I get, and it lets them know the day of the meeting and the address, and they can put that into their GPS if they want to. Lets them know to bring plenty of business cards, etc. Aside from the visitor getting that, the leadership team of the Burr chapter up here, they have all just received an email saying, congratulations, John Smith is going to be visiting your chapter next week. It gives them the contact information and all the details about that person and their category so that they can do things like pre-follow up with that visitor. It will allow them to give them a call and say, hey, we look forward to having you at our meeting. I can see that you're an architect. I can't wait to introduce you to the builder. I think you guys will have a great relationship, which will help to increase. It'll make them, the more you can make them feel like they're welcome at that group before they even walk in the door, the better the chance that they will enjoy the meeting and become a member. You can also register visitors on your regional website. Visitors can register themselves. Very easy to do. It's on your chapter page. So if I click the regional website button in the upper right-hand corner, and let's say that I'm browsing the internet and I go and I look for the chapters here. Let me take a look at the founders chapter. Wow, 27 members. That's a great group. I think I'm going to go and visit this chapter. And this is something, again, that a visitor can fill out themselves. You can redirect them to go and fill out a registration form, and this allows them to register themselves to visit a meeting. And the same email process happens. All right, let's fast forward. The meeting has happened. The visitor has shown up. Now what we can do is we have our visitor sign-in sheet and things like that, and we want to make sure that we mark the attendance of the visitors that have been there. So to do that, what we're going to do is manage registered visitors and mark attendance. So the next step in the visitor process, this is usually done by a visitor host, although sometimes it is done by secretary treasurers as well. And let me just do a search for all the visitors, and these are all of the visitors that have been registered at some point in time to the BNI Burr chapter. Some of them have shown up, some of them are for future meetings, and some of them didn't show up. Now, I don't know, this person Jeremy, they were registered on the 12th of February. It doesn't look like they ever showed up. If I want to, I can always remove this person from the registered visitors by clicking the delete button. So you can keep your registered visitors list nice and clean here. Now, there's also times when somebody say, yeah, you know what, I registered for yesterday's meeting. I wasn't able to make it. I'd really, really like to come to next week's meeting. Well, you can actually use this to reschedule them for an upcoming meeting. All we need to do is, let's say Jeremy Walsh here was scheduled for 7/29. I'm going to go ahead and edit this record. Now, once I'm here, I can go and I can just scroll down and change the date. So I can reschedule them, let's say, for next week's meeting. And once I click submit, it will send them a new email, letting them know that they are registered for this different meeting. You can see that the visit date has changed here. So Amy has a question. Amy says, since I don't show in my BNI Connect to this section, may I assume not everyone has access to visitor registration? Amy, that's correct. Usually this managing visitors is only available to visitor hosts and the actual leadership, the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. That being said, it does change. It varies region by region. So if you think you should have this permission, you don't, definitely check with your regional office, your executive director or your director consultant. So, does that help, Amy? Let's see. Sid says, can you edit the text or add your personal message on the visitor registration prior to the meeting? Not on the registration message. That is a message that goes out from the region. So it will go out to all visitors. So you can't edit that particular message. All right, so now let's say that people did show up. So now we had our meeting yesterday up at the Burr chapter, and my good friend FFSDA did show up to that meeting yesterday. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I mark that person as having attended the meeting. So this way to do this again is I want to go in and edit this record. And you'll see right up at the top here, there's a checkbox for the visitor attended. So just check that box to confirm that they actually showed up to the meeting. So I'm going to do that. And as soon as I do that, you'll see another box shows up under it. It says, do you want to add this person to the Poms report? In other words, the person that that invited them, will they get credit for inviting a visitor to the chapter meeting? And there's times when you want to give people credit and there's times when you don't. Let's say that you are recording this person for their second visit or their third visit or their 16th visit. You probably don't want to give Poms credit for that the second, third, fourth, and 15th time. And hopefully they've submitted an application by now anyway. The other thing is that it does affect your conversion ratio. So, people like members of other chapters that are just visiting the chapter, they're not really eligible to become a member. So you probably don't want to put them into the Poms report because that will lower your conversion ratio, which is important if you're using any of the management tools like the traffic lights or things like that. So that will lower your traffic lights having too many visitors in the Poms that were not valid visitors. So again, you can make that choice. You can double check, make sure their profession and specialty are correct. You're going to check the person that invited them. That's the person that would get the credit in the Poms report, is the person that you choose from the drop-down list here. Check all the rest of this information, and you can choose whether or not to send them a visitor follow-up mail. Now, why would you possibly not want to send them a follow-up mail? There's times when you could be doing catch-up work 2, 3, 4 weeks later, or you had a visitor's day and you forgot to enter this one, you go back and you enter it later. You probably, if it's more than, I'd say, a week past when the visitor came to the meeting, you probably don't want to send them an email at that point because it'll look kind of silly. Thanks for coming to our meeting the other day when it was a month ago. I'm going to go ahead and leave that in there and click submit. Now, as soon as I submit that, it will take my good friend FFSDA out of this list. They're no longer a registered visitor. They're now in our visitors database, people that have shown up to the meeting. And I did just get this wonderful email saying, thank you for recently visiting, and it gives me the date of the visit. All right, so that is visitors. Any quick questions on visitors? So let's see, Mary has a question. She says, where do we find the visitor sign-in sheet that some chapters use to have visitors sign in on? Would this be located in the documents on BNI Connect? So yes, it would. If your region has uploaded the visitor sign-in sheet to share in the documents section, that is where you would find it. For those of you that don't know where that is, just real quick, I'm going to go back to the home screen. And that would be located in the My Network. So if I go to My Network, you'll see these tiles of all the different networking functions and events and things like that. There is a Documents section, and you can click More. And if your region has uploaded the visitor sign-in sheet, for example, my region has, I can type in visitor up in this kind of search box, and I'll see this visitor sign-in sheet here. We have it in PDF, and that's just my region has done that. That's my executive director. So you would have to check in your own documents if it was there. All right, so any other questions on visitors real quick? Otherwise, I'm going to move on a little bit to some of the other functions. All right, so let's take a look at some of the other things, just probably 2 or 3 more things here under the operations menu that we're going to take a look at. The first of which is meeting management. There's a couple of different things under meeting management. You can work with the Poms reports. So these are the weekly Poms reports. Generally speaking, the vice president is the one that's working with the Poms reports. But again, it's not necessarily always the vice president. Some chapters have, some regions have this delegated out to other people in the chapter to help the vice president out. This is also where usually, again, the secretary treasurer, the person that's scheduling the speaker rotation, would go to schedule the speakers. So entering a Poms report, there's 2 different things. You can view Poms or you can directly go to the enter screen. I usually go into view Poms summary first. This is where you can go in and look at any individual Poms reports. So the first thing to do is just choose a date range. You can go back as far as you want to. I mean, I can go back to 1995. I can keep going back 10 years at a time here. Before BNI was even conceived, I mean, you can really look at any of the Poms reports individually. And I'll see all of the Poms reports starting from that particular date. And you'll notice there's different statuses here. We have discarded, which means it was thrown away. Completed just means that it is completely input and it is counting towards all the statistics. A holiday meeting is when you didn't meet for that week. It won't count against per week statistics when it's marked as a holiday. Draft mode means it was started and there's some statistics saved, but it has not been submitted yet, which means that they're not counting towards the stats. And again, you can look through all of these. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that especially with these Poms reports, if you remember back to the beginning of the webinar, we talked about the online slips. And what happens is that as soon as somebody passes an online slips during the week, it will get put in and it will create a draft report for that particular week. So we can see that, like if I look at this draft report, I'm sorry, I'm really bad about submitting Poms reports up here in Antarctica. But if I look at this report, it has some information in it already. And this is going to be all of the online slips that were passed that week. And I can check that by clicking on the slips audit report. We can see here that a visitor was entered against this week, and that's why there was a draft copy created. Now, when you're done viewing Poms reports, you can go in and click the Enter Poms Report button here, or you can do that back from the Operations menu as well. Now, the first thing that happens when I go to enter a Poms report, the first thing that happens is that the VP will be asked to authorize the visitors that will go into the Poms. So what I'm saying here is that, or what I'm seeing here is that we have the FFSDA that I just entered as a visitor. Mike Jones is going to get credit for that visitor for the Poms report from 7/29. Do I want to accept that or not? Now from here I can click on that if I need to go and edit anything. If I don't want to accept it, I could choose no. Now, this isn't giving me a yes option just because of a weird thing that I did here, marked that Poms as a holiday. But normally you would see a yes or a no there. So if I reject this, it won't delete the visitor, but it will not add the credit to the Poms report. So it lets me know the visitor has not been added to the Poms. And now I can go ahead and do my Poms report. I just need to pick a random week. I use this one a lot for testing. So entering a Poms report is pretty straightforward. All you have to do is kind of fill out the spreadsheet. So everybody's attendance is marked, present, absent, late, medical substitute, RGI and RGO. RG stands for referrals given. So those are referrals given in the chapter. I and O, inside and outside. An inside referral is one member doing business with another member personally. So for example, if Roger Dodger used the services of Alfred E. Newman himself, that would be, he would be giving an inside referral, and Alfred Newman would be receiving an inside referral. On the other hand, if Albert Camus, if he referred his mother to Art Garfunkel, that would be a referral given outside for Albert Camus and a referral received outside for Art Garfunkel. You'd also put in the visitors if they were not automatically input, one-to-ones, thank you for closed business, and you do have to scroll over a little bit for the CEUs. You can also keep any meeting notes or remarks. Great meeting this week. Only attacked by one polar bear. Once you are satisfied with that, you just want to go ahead and click the Submit Poms, and that will finalize the report. You can then see all of the details of the report here. Now, if there's any changes that need to be made, or even on past reports, if you go into the view of the report, you should see the Unlock Poms button. If you don't, then that's something that would have to be done by your regional office, but you can always unlock a Poms report. Make any corrections that are needed. So let's say actually, Harvey Keitel was absent that week, and I forgot to put in a one-to-one between Thea and Victoria. Now I can resubmit this Poms. Only after a Poms has been submitted will all the online slips go from draft to completed, and will these statistics be included in any of the actual reports in the system. All right, let me go back to the operations menu. Any other questions on the Poms reports? Sid says, what about chapters that rely on slips being turned in? I would want members to input themselves and then I would authorize them to be added. So let me give you an example of that, Sid. So an example of that is my personal chapter. I am in a chapter. We meet on Thursdays. We actually met this morning here in Rhode Island. So we are 100% online slips. So we actually don't use the paper slips at all for recording. And if it didn't happen in BNI Connect, then it didn't happen. At least that's how it works in our chapter. we still have slips available, and we still, we use the printed out slips to celebrate all the activity. But what happens is when my vice president, for example, she's going to go in after today's meeting at some point, during the week this week, and she's going to go in and click on Enter Poms, and she's going to enter the Poms for this week's meeting, which was this morning. She'll click Enter Poms. And you'll see all of the information has already been filled out for her. If I click on the, up at the top here, the slips audit report, this is all of the slips that have already been entered for this week. So they've already happened, they've already been input. Everybody already did this work during the week. So now all my vice president has to do is go in and mark people that were absent or late or what have you, and click submit, and she's done. So rather than it taking an hour to fill out this Poms report, it takes all of about 45 seconds or so. So that's what it looks like when you're using the online slips for this. Let's see. So does that answer your question, Sid? Sid says, how do you train your members to be so agreeable? It was a lot of work. It took a very long time. It was a slow process, but finally what happened was over the past couple of years, we talked about it, and then finally when our new leadership team came in, we go from October to October. So when our new leadership team came in last October, they just said, you know what, we're done with passing the paper slips. It's not fair to our vice president. You need to enter it online. We brought some laptops in for a couple of weeks and helped people through the process, but it took some time, but it went through pretty well. Janice says, what happens to the electronic slips when the VP doesn't enter the Poms report on time? They just stay there. They'll stay there forever until they get entered. And it's really what happens is that so let's say that my VP has been absent for a couple of weeks. All the time between meetings defines when they'll be passed to that meeting. So for example, let me just use my own personal chapter as an example. My chapter meeting ended at 8:30 this morning. According to BNI Connect, my chapter meeting ends at 8:30. As of 8:31 this morning, every slip that gets entered by any of our members gets attributed to next week's meeting. All the way up until 8:29 next Thursday, they'll go to next week's meeting. 8:30 next week, they'll start going towards the following week's meeting, regardless of whether my VP actually submits or not. The difference is they won't show up in the summary Poms report until that has been submitted. So does that answer your question, Janice? So the answer is yes, they will be attributed to the right meeting. Mary says, so once the VP approves the slips entered in BNI Connect, the information is migrated over to the Poms report. Do we go over how the VP approves the slips? It's not really approving on a slip-by-slip basis. As soon as you submit, you're approving. So you'll see all of those slips. You can click on the audit report. You can take a look through the audit report. But generally speaking, it's not I approve this one, I approve this one, I approve this one. It's just I approve this set of statistics, and you click OK and you click submit, and then it's all set. Does that answer your question, Mary? All right, there was somebody else that asked a question that started with the word ideally, and I accidentally hit the delete button on it. Would you mind resubmitting that question? I apologize for whoever I did that to. All right, so while you're retyping that question, again, I apologize for that. Let's just take a look. The one other thing under this meeting management here is the view edit speakers. And this is really assigning the speaker rotation for the chapter. Pretty straightforward process. All we need to do is, if you want to see who's been assigned as speakers, you can go back in time if you'd like to and look at the speakers as they have been assigned. You can only assign people though for the future. If I need to assign somebody, let's say for next week, I could choose the date. And again, I can only assign for future dates. I choose who the speaker is and I enter their topic. Once I click submit, they will be part of that speaker rotation. Now, what the speaker rotation does is a couple of things. First of all, it actually publicizes it on the chapter website of who the upcoming speakers are. The second thing is it does send an email reminder to the upcoming speakers. So the speakers will be reminded 6 days and 3 days before your next meeting that they are the speaker. It also lets the secretary treasurer know, reminds them 3 days before that who the speaker is. So pretty straightforward process. The only I guess what I hear is a negative thing about the speaker rotation. You can't move anybody around. So I can't like pick up Robin and move her to a different date. You can only delete somebody and add a new person in on the slot. That does have to do with, just from a technical perspective, the scheduling process of the emails and things like that. So you can't really, a lot of people like to just shift everybody up a week. That's not something that's possible right now with this. All right, and now mentoring is the only other thing that we're going to touch upon here in this part of the program. And it's pretty much as easy as assigning the speaker rotation. I click on mentoring program. I can assign a mentor and mentee. All I need to do is choose the start date that I'd like them to start receiving emails. And let's say that that's going to be on Monday. And let's say the mentor is, I'm going to be the mentor. And let's see, Mike Moffat's going to be the mentee. I just click submit, and this will start an email process where the mentor and the mentee get an email for 7 to 8 weeks, depending on how your region has it defined, about what they should be talking about on a weekly basis in order to get that new member really kick-started into BNI. Couple of questions. Sid says, ideally, how often and how soon after a meeting should the VP enter the Poms data? As soon as possible, in my opinion. I mean, there's no reason not to. I would say, go back to your office after the meeting and put it in right away. So that's my opinion. Sid says, chapter website via BNI Connect. Maybe you can give feedback after the program. So yeah, Sid, let's take a look at that after we're through this, and maybe we'll take a look specifically and see if we can find your chapter website. Okay. All right, and so that's the chapter operations. That took a little bit longer than it usually does. You guys had some great questions. Are there any additional questions on the operations? I'm going to jump into reports, and I just want to very, very quickly show you guys a couple of reports in the system. I'm not going to go through all of them. Sunil says, do we have a tracking mechanism for the mentoring? There isn't really a tracking mechanism. All this is it really is just designed to get them the emails on a weekly basis. The only thing you can do is really you can view the history of who's been a mentor and mentee. I can go back and take a look and see who's been assigned as mentors and mentees over that period of time. So I can see all the people that were assigned as mentors and mentees to see who's been through the program. But there's not really a tracking sheet or anything else like that. All right, and Emily says, I don't have a managed news option. Is that regional? Yes, that is a regional function. So if you don't have it, it's just been turned off in your region. So that's something to check with your executive director about. Okay. All right, so let's go through a couple of reports. We have about 11 minutes to the top of the hour, so I do want to be respectful of people's time as well, although I do BNI Connect all day, every day, so I gladly talk about this all day, every day, but I know other people might have other things to get back to, so let's take a look at a couple of reports. Now, Secretary Treasurers, especially membership committee people, the member training report, pretty straightforward. You can click on it. You can see who's been to various trainings or who's been to all of the trainings. However, there's one kind of little hidden feature, or one that not many people take the time to click on. And that is this one right here. It says show never attended. So there's a policy in BNI that we're not supposed to assign people to the 10-minute presentation until they've taken a member success program. How do you easily find that out, or how do you find out who in your chapter hasn't taken it? Click on member training report, click on member success program, show never attended, and click go. This lets me know that Peter Turner, there's only one person in my chapter who has not taken the member success program. It means that he can't be scheduled yet for the 10-minute presentation. And if I was on the leadership team, I would probably want to just have a talk with him, because he did join in April. So it's been more than a couple of months since, and he hasn't taken the member success program. So very easy to get that information here with the member training report. One thing that was brought up a couple of times is I don't have this option, or I don't see this menu item. A lot of times the menu items are going to display or not display depending on what roles you have in your chapter. So one of the things that you can check is the roster report. The roster report is pretty straightforward in that it shows you obviously all the people in your chapter. It's the chapter roster, phone numbers and a quick snapshot of the Poms, but up at the top it also shows you who is assigned to each position in the chapter. So if, for example, your visitor host comes to you and says, hey, I can't enter the visitors into the system. I'm the visitor host. I should have that permission. Take a look. Are they listed as a visitor host? So if John Smith comes to me and says, I can't enter the visitors, I can say, well, no, Robin and Seth are listed as visitor hosts, but John, you're not listed. Did you take the training? If that person needs to be listed, then you just need to contact your regional office or your executive director, and they can assign that position to them. But that will determine which things they'll be able to have access to in BNI Connect. Also a great way to, if you need the number for your director consultant or your area director, don't know where it is, great place to just quickly look for it and find it. Membership dues report, very straightforward, just shows, again, the list of people in the chapter, what category they are, and when they're up for renewal. A couple of hidden elements about this report. It will sort everybody by due date. So the people that are due in August, they should be well underway in the renewal process. And then the people that are in September should also pretty much be in the middle of the renewal process as well. If you're using the online renewals, you can also pre-approve people through this screen. But the hidden element of this is really that you should be reviewing people that are due in 6 months. So, 6 months from now is February of next year. And it's these people that are due in January and February and even March. Those are the people that we want to be reviewing. And the reason for that is when it comes to keeping people in the chapter, if I review somebody as they're turning in their renewal application, it doesn't give them any chance to improve. So it's really more just a yay or a nay, not much you can do to change behavior. But people that are due in 6 months or 7 months or 5 months, you can say, you've been absent a lot, or we need to get you to do more one-to-ones. They have a chance to actually adjust their behaviors over the course of the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, as opposed to just a couple of weeks. All right, the meeting notes report. This is a great report for helping your members to give more referrals. That's right, I said give more referrals. One of the best things we can do at our chapter meeting is to pay attention to what people are asking for in their weekly presentations. One way that we can help remember what people are asking for is to write that information down, and that's exactly what the meeting notes report is for. It allows us to click and just be able to basically print out a list of all the people in our chapter with a space to write down what it is that they're asking for. That helps us to remember what they're asking for. Even if you throw that piece of paper away, even if you leave it on the front seat of your car for a week, the act of writing it down really helps you to remember. Now, the other thing I like to show you with this report is some people may say, oh, I don't like the way that's ordered. It should be ordered by first name or by company name, or there's not enough room to keep notes or things like that. Great report to export. Every report in BNI can be exported. Usually you'll have two options, export and export without headers up here at the top. Export just is going to take all of the information you see, including all this stuff up here. Export without headers will just bring the data over. So I usually use export without headers. I can then open this file, this Excel file up. And the nice thing is that once I have it in Excel, I can do whatever I want with it. I can give this a nice color scheme by doing format as table. If I decide I want more room for notes, I can expand that up a little bit. So now I have a bigger area to take notes in. I can sort it by first name instead. All stuff that's really easy to do once you get it into Excel. All right, hopefully everybody's familiar already with the Poms report. Just a quick thing about the Poms report, you can choose any date range you want. So I can go back and look all the way back to the beginning history of my chapter and showing the member names that are dropped. So if I just choose this without dropped members and I click go, this will show everybody. One thing to keep in mind is that this total column will always include the full statistics of the chapter. So if I choose this, just take a look at a couple of these numbers. We have 2.249 million in the past 6 months. If I choose to show dropped members, which is going to increase the list, it's still 2.249 million, and that's because these totals will include the dropped members always. It just won't show their names in the list. And the reason for that really is just if you go back and look at this report for 10 years, this is going to have a whole lot of names in it that you may not recognize. And most of the time people aren't looking for the individual. They just want to know, what did my chapter do historically over this time? And regardless of whether you're showing the names, the totals will always include everybody. A lot of the rest of these are fairly self-explanatory, and I know we are at the top of the hour. So what I'd like to do is just give you one last final hint. As you go through and start clicking on reports and finding your favorite reports and your favorite things that you do, or the visitor invitation or the email my chapter, things like that, I'm going to go back to my home screen and back to the My Business page. And you'll see here this little left-hand menu. I do have the ability to, these are the different shortcut modules. So you have the My BNI Business, the My Network, then you probably have Chapter. And what this chapter menu is rather than go to Operations Chapter, Reports Chapter, Admin Chapter, what you can do is put all of your favorite functions right here under this shortcut menu. And you do that by clicking Configure. And all the things on the left-hand side are in my shortcut menu. All the things on the right-hand side are things that I have access to, but I just don't have in my shortcut menu. Now, you can take stuff out of your shortcut menu if you want to. You can put stuff in that you want. So let's say I just want email my chapter. I'm going to, I like the speaker report. And I'm going to record a visitor, enter new applications, and let's say the meeting notes report. Those are the things I'm going to use most often. So I click submit. I'm going to close out of this, and now it's going to refresh, and my shortcut menu here has just these things. So instead of, if I need to email my chapter, instead of going to operations chapter, create email, email my chapter, I just click on email my chapter, and it pops this function right up. Of course, I can also change the order. So if I want enter the meeting notes report to be the first thing on my list, I'll just drag that up and change the order. And it's going to refresh, and now the meeting notes report is up at the top of that list. All right, so we are at the top of the hour. So what I'd like to do is just open this up to questions. So what questions you guys have? And as I said, I'm happy to answer as many questions as you guys have. Let's see, Sid says that he'd like my email address so he can have some recommendations. Absolutely, Sid. The best way to get in touch with me, support@bniconnect.com. Support@bniconnect.com. Be happy to help you out. If it's anything policy related, I am going to probably refer you back to your executive director, but I am happy to talk through things with you. So please do feel free to shoot me an email. You can find my contact information in BNI Connect. Just do a search for me. Search up here using the magnifying glass. My name, again, is Jeremy Walsh. And you'll be able to find my contact information right on my profile. I share all of my phone numbers and email addresses and things like that in case you forget. And I'd be happy to connect with you as well. So here's all my phone numbers. You can get me on Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of wonderful stuff as well. All right. Are there any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions, I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Just a reminder that this is being recorded and you will be able to find it on the support site. Finally, I'd love it if you gave me a like, facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. You'll find our Facebook page, and I'm really, really trying to get to 10,000 likes. If you guys could give me a little boost with that, I would greatly appreciate it. Facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. And again, we do reminders and all sorts of things up here. So. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here today and have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. Happy connecting.